Today's episode of Inside Gaming Daily is brought to you by Manscaped. You can get 20% off and free shipping with the code INSIDE at manscaped.com.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Inside for Monday.
It's Monday. Hey, we got a clap for Monday. We survived the weekend. We made it through without playing any Blizzard games. Boycott still in effect, boys.
Unless you were living under a rock last week, you probably heard that Blizzard was in a bit of hot water.
Yeah, like a thimbleful. They made headlines after suspending top Hearthstone player Blitzchung Nguyen for a whole year after making pro-Hong Kong statements after winning on air. Oh, and they took his prize money too.
And the internet promptly went nuts.
That's the internet.
Artist rendering. They're accusing Blizzard of punishing a player because it didn't want to offend China. Boycotts were threatened, memes were made, national media got involved, and it turned into a giant PR nightmare for Blizzard.
Yeah, we might have, I don't know, made a video about it.
2.
Yeah. 3?
8.
What?
Hey! Well, it's time for one more video because the head of Blizzard issued a statement about the whole mess, cutting the player suspension in half and returning his prize money. So, small win.
Yeah, I mean, Blizzard's obviously trying to just button this up and get it over with, right, Brian?
Yeah, and you know what? If I were Blizzard, I'd want this to go away as soon as possible too, especially since we're a little over 2 weeks away from BlizzCon, and Blizzard's probably getting a little nervous at this point.
It won't be the best look to have scads of free Hong Kong signs in the audience while you're trying to announce new projects for the global market.
So it's not going to be easy, because boy, once the internet gets a good pylon going, a simple blog post isn't going to turn all that around. We got all our pitchforks and our torches and everything. You want us to just go home?
No.
Bullshit. I called the babysitter for this.
Everything about the situation is messy, and good old jibby jab statements just has not changed much.
This is the thing I'm trying to get going here, and I think it even is happening within Blizzard. So Blizzard president's name is J. Allen Brack. Just call him Jab. He also just looks like a jab. Look at his face. A little jab.
What is a jab? Well, whatever. Let's get to Blizzard's statement. They released it late Friday, which in itself is pretty suspicious. Right before the weekend. That's usually when you let people go so they don't blow their brains out.
Brian's been around the block a few times. This is an old media tactic, right?
A few times, yeah. This is some inside media baseball here, but releasing something late Friday, that's a very common tactic when companies are trying to either announce bad news or something they just want to fly under the radar. The idea is you put something out on a Friday, hope that's all forgotten by Monday because all the reporters have gone home for the weekend, and by Monday it's just old news. My school used to do that too. We would hold cheerleader tryouts the Friday before spring break, so if you didn't make the squad, you had a whole week to go home and cry about it.
That's right. Plenty of time to forget. Blackout drunk Friday, blackout drunk Saturday, blackout drunk Sunday. Come in on Monday, I don't even know who I am anymore.
Never knew Brian was a cheerleader. So that's actually not quite as true with this whole 24-hour internet era that we live in, but it's still a fact that people don't pay as much attention to the news on Saturdays and Sundays because of church.
Yeah. Well, it's the Lord's Day. So yeah, let's look at what Blizzard said. This is the actual statement. We finally got to it. This is from Blizzard President J. Allen Brack. Jab. Who reiterated that Blitzchung was punished because he, quote, used his segment to make a statement about the situation in Hong Kong in violation of the rules he acknowledged and understood.
Jab added that, quote, we strongly encourage everyone in our community to share their viewpoints in the many places available to express themselves. However, the official broadcast needs to be about the tournament and to be a place where all are welcome. In support of that, we want to keep the official channel's focus on the game.
So then, yeah, the big question, did Blizzard do this to avoid offending China and its giant market of gamers?
According to our good old friend Jab, no. He wrote, quote, the specific views expressed by Blitzchung were not a factor in the decision we made.
Sure.
I want to be clear, our relationships in China had no influence on our decision.
So he went on to say, we have these rules to keep the focus on the game and on the tournament to the benefit of a global audience, and that was the only consideration in the actions we took. If this had been the opposing viewpoint delivered in the same divisive and deliberate way, we would have felt and acted the same. I mean,
But after reflecting on Blitzchung's penalty, he wrote that, quote, in hindsight, our process wasn't adequate and we reacted too quickly.
So they're returning his prize money because, as Jab put it, Blitzchung played fairly in the tournament itself.
They went on to add that there is a consequence for taking the conversation away from the purpose of the event and disrupting or derailing the broadcast. So they're still suspending him, but for 6 months instead of for a year.
Yeah, and the casters are still involved in this, right, Brian?
Yeah, so Blizzard had said in the past that they would no longer work with them, but Jab said that they're just suspending them for 6 months too, because in his words, their purpose is to keep the event focused on the tournament. That didn't happen here.
I've seen some mention in some translations that suggest that the casters were in on it and even prompted the statement, so it gets a little messy. We should add that Blizzard seems to have two very different messages about this whole thing. One for the Western audiences and one for the Chinese audience.
While Jab sounds much more neutral in this response, over in China, it was a little less so, maybe a lot. An official Blizzard account run by the company's Chinese publishing partner, NetEase, NetEase had a much different statement on the Chinese social media platform Weibo.
Weird. What did that statement read, Brian?
That statement expressed Blizzard's strong indignation of the protest and said it would, quote, protect China's national dignity. Seemed to be a bit more one-sided over there.
NetEase, incidentally, is Blizzard's partner in developing the upcoming Diablo Immortal mobile game as well.
That's weird.
Yeah, maybe give them the keys to the castle.
This could be a case of Blizzard trying to have it both ways, appearing like a neutral party to Western audiences while looking like a tough guy to China. Yeah.
To be fair, all of these are obvious, dumb, very boring surface level issues.
Dumb. This is the internet, damn it. We want that spice. Give us a good conspiracy.
Autumn, X-Files theme. Can we legally use that? I don't know. So there's also been speculation out there that Brack's statement was actually written by a Chinese speaker. Really?
Yeah.
Brian, tell me more.
Yeah, so this comes from a Twitter user, SG Bluebell, who says they're bilingual. They compared some of the phrasings in the statement and concluded that some seemed like typical Chinese, which makes me think there's some cobbling together here. And then they kind of broke it down for us.
This is some zoom enhanced stuff. So they use some samples like Brack saying there is a consequence instead of the more common English phrasing there are consequences, which could be because there are no plurals in Chinese, leading to the more awkward phrase there is a consequence. There are a ton of other things too, like the lack of contraction, some of the awkward phrasing. It is just a theory, but it's interesting. I don't know, I enjoy linguistics and how that can affect the way language is expressed, so it's a fun read either way. It's educational. Oh, they got to Brian. A couple of theories here. Maybe it was written in such a way to make translations easier. Maybe Jab is just an awkward writer. Or aliens. They're here.
So that's Blizzard's side of things. Then Blitzchung responded with a statement of his own on Saturday.
He thanked everyone for their support and said he was grateful to Blizzard for reconsidering his ban.
Then he added that he wouldn't do any similar protests again during tournaments, saying, quote, in the future, I will be more careful and express my opinions or show my support to Hong Kong on my own personal platforms.
And it's wild what a week in the re-education camps will do to you, huh?
Yeah, you'll say all sorts of things.
So yeah, I'm sure Blizzard would appreciate you keeping your trap shut too.
As for the suspension, he said he still thinks it's quite a lot and said he wishes Blizzard would reconsider the decision to suspend the two casters.
Is Blitzchung gonna keep competing, Brian?
He kind of asked and answered that question himself, and he said he doesn't know yet. He said he's gonna take some time to relax and basically decide if he'll keep playing competitively or not. But he said he loves the Hearthstone community and kind of left it on a positive note.
That's tough. I mean, if you gotta spend 6 months out of the game and then get back into it.
He shouldn't worry, it's Hearthstone. The meta won't change at all in those 6 months.
Boom, Hearthstone burn! Oh!
Got him.
Oh, Brian, oh!
Now that we've moved past the weekend news cycle, which doesn't exist, it seems like both sides are trying to play nice and put this behind them, but is it gonna be that easy?
Probably not, because BlizzCon, Blizzard's big annual convention, is coming up in a few weeks. And it sounds like lots of people aren't gonna let the whole Hong Kong thing go.
It's being reported that there are multiple groups planning to protest the event. A subreddit called Protest BlizzCon has been started and already has 3,500 members.
Oh boy. And the digital rights group Fight for the Future is calling for protests at BlizzCon when it starts on November 1st. They also started a website called Gamers for Freedom, which includes a petition to urge game companies to support basic freedoms for gamers in America, Hong Kong, China, and around the globe.
In a release, Fight for the Future, Deputy Director Evan Greer said, quote, we're going to make an example out of Blizzard to make sure that all companies know that throwing human rights and free expression under the bus to make some extra money will not be tolerated.
So the $1 million question, will there actually be protests at BlizzCon? Because boy, people like to post on the internet, but doing things in real life is a little harder, huh?
Damned if you do, damned if you don't, right? Blizzard's like, hey, let me look at your sign before you go in. You know, you build a wall, people bring bigger ladders, so they're just gonna figure it out.
Yeah, they will. The one thing you cannot do, especially with an American audience, is tell them not to do something. There's just a relentless contrarianism in American culture that is both endearing and really aggravating sometimes.
Yeah. Our government figured out years ago where they create designated protest areas that are gated off somewhere off to the side.
You gotta take the taboo nature out of it, because as soon as you say somebody can't do something, they're immediately gonna do it. So Blizzard, if they're smart, which I think this whole process has proved they're not, they probably should make an organized protest area where people can go do it, get it out of your system over there. We've enabled you to do it, supporting free speech, blah, 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 blah. Just don't do it on the show floor. But you know, this is the internet. There have been a couple of instances of people getting all riled up to go do a thing and then they just don't.
Yeah, there was the whole Storm Area 51 movement. That got a big response online. More than 2 million people signed up online that they were interested or kind of interested in raiding Area 51 so they could see some aliens. So, you know, it seemed like a big deal on the internet. In reality, not so much. 100 people showed up and instead of storming the compound, just one person was arrested, and that was for public urination.
Geez, Autumn, keep it in your pants.
Why was he publicly publicly urinating. There's like 800 porta potties.
Oh, really? They brought this
it's
out for
America.
everyone? Keep in mind, though, you should never underestimate the passion of the online audience, or gamers for that matter.
Gamers.
It's certainly not hard to imagine some people holding individual protests at the event, especially considering that it's just a few weeks away.
So one thing's for sure here, the Q&A segments after developer panels are going to get muy caliente.
Yeah, if they even have them, it is possible Blizzard will just cut the whole Q&A this year because they know the cluster that they're going to be walking into.
Yeah. Again, X-FILES theme. Bit conspiratorial, but I've talked to some devs who have dealt with spicy Q&As in the past. So they may cut Q&As, but not just for this. So last year, another red shirt guy got up and became a meme champion on the internet for asking the Diablo Immortal developers if it was all an out-of-season April Fool's joke. Dropping bombs. So a couple things about that. Typically, questions are screened at Q&As like this, kind of like Adam was saying with signs and stuff. So that dude probably outright lied about the question he intended to ask. It becomes a huge negative dogpile on the internet, and boy, do corporate executives hate being made fun of or being turned into memes.
Similar to China, actually. There's some parallels there. So yeah, it's possible Blizzard was going to kill open mic Q&As already because of that incident, but it's way more likely now that anyone might just scream at Hong Kong into the mic and get Streisand all over the world immediately.
Outside of BlizzCon though, players already say that they're boycotting Blizzard as a result of all of this.
Unlike every other video game boycott in history, there's already some evidence that this might be effective.
Weird, right? How's it looking, Brian?
Just very preliminary, but I read something this morning from Cowen analyst Doug Kreutz, who said Monday that the boycott has hurt Hearthstone sales, but he also added that they see the boycott is easing. As for other games, Kreutz said they couldn't determine the boycott's impact on World of Warcraft or Overwatch due to a lack of data. So just a little hint, but it may have been effective on a larger scale, and that's obviously something Blizzard does not want to see.
Boycotts are something that Blizzard will definitely pay attention to because ultimately hitting a company in the wallet gets the most attention.
Blizzard is most definitely ready to put this whole mess in the rear view. A lot of other people might not be so ready though.
Yeah, meanwhile, it's worth noting that Blizzard is not the only gaming company that's banning political protests. In the aftermath of all of this, Riot Games issued a public directive to casters and players to not discuss politics on the air during League of Legends broadcasts.
And wouldn't you know it, Riot is wholly owned by the Chinese company Tencent. I'm sure there's no coincidence.
Meanwhile, Epic Games went the other route and said it won't punish players for making such statements.
Whether or not you can make a so-called political statement during an esports event really depends on the company and who the company is owned by and where the event is broadcasting. Brief aside, I feel like we should make a disclaimer here. We are referring to certain things as political, but that's just the terminology that's being used. I think human rights is hopefully a non-political issue. Moral, not political.
It is the golden rule. Treat people the way you want to be treated. Don't put them in camps. While Blizzard is trying to prevent itself as being completely apolitical and keeping official channels focus on the game, that's not always the case.
Yeah, so remember the thing we said about politics and human rights and all that stuff. Remember that. The Overwatch League had a Pride Day event a few months back celebrating its LGBTQ community. Tendy's got a special rainbow bandana, and Blizzard sold special Pride t-shirts for all of its teams.
Yeah, that's certainly a case of Blizzard taking a stand on an issue that can be controversial depending on where in the world you live.
Oh gosh, and wouldn't you know it, the Pride Day event did not broadcast in full in all worldwide regions.
Docker reported back in June that South Korea omitted all Pride Day aspects of the broadcast, keeping it, as Blizzard would say, free of politics.
If you look at Blizzard's actions rather than their statements, you could certainly argue that Blizzard is choosing safe causes that won't cause them any business in their relative regions. And maybe there should have been more of an outcry about the South Korean broadcast getting censored. The system is working as intended when everyone in their relative regions gets the entertainment that they want in a manner that doesn't upset them. But now suddenly this Hong Kong thing has made everyone aware of the global stage.
Right, in this case, voicing support for Hong Kong in any region stands to cost them a ton of business, like make or break the company amounts of business.
Activision Blizzard hasn't been doing great. Their stock price has gotten punched multiple times over the past year. They need to break into a new market. They need to find growth.
Also, these trading card games are money makers, and Hearthstone isn't what it used to be, but I'm sure it still makes them a bunch of money, and that is money that they need right now because they're certainly not making a lot of new games. So they need that Hearthstone pie, even if it's a smaller pie than it used to be.
With all that said, on the other hand, Blizzard also forced a guild of gay players in World of Warcraft to change its name, so not exactly consistent on the issue there. What was their name, Brian?
It was Gay Boys, and they made them rename it, so now it was Guild ZFXPK. And we all know what that means.
Situation's messy. I know a lot of people say that to try to get out of making a judgment. We're not here for that. Be clear about that. We report the news and maybe offer some commentary to kind of provide background. We're not here to tell you what to think. But yes, this is a messy, complicated issue, except for the fact that everyone deserves human rights. I can say that easily.
If your government's oppressing you, go to the protest area. It's perfectly gated off and no one can see you.
Today's episode of Inside Gaming Daily is brought to you by Manscaped, because if you're gonna free Hong Kong, you gotta free your genitals too. That's right, I just equaled those things. That's right, a human rights issue in your balls to having no hair on them. They're the same on Inside Gaming Daily. So yeah, Manscaped is sponsoring this podcast, and yes, they sell everything you need to trim your downstairs which you should liberate your genitals. There, I did it again. So Halloween is right around the corner. You don't want to spook someone with your scary bush. That's right. When you're wearing your hot Halloween costume, your hot Link, your hot Kratos, whatever, people get a couple of Halloween punches in them. Things get frisky. You want to make sure you're looking good, trim, and complete downstairs, because you know, video game characters don't have mounds of pubic hair. No, they're clean shaven, and you should be too. Manscaped offers all the accoutrement you need to make your downstairs trimmed, beautiful, and on point. They have all sorts of things, like the electric trimmer called the Lawnmower 2.0. It's waterproof and skin-safe technology that'll protect you from nicking your pumpkins. You can also create less mess by trimming in the shower. Just have fun picking all that out of the drain. Let's not forget about the Crop Preserver, an anti-chafing ball deodorant. Yes, I said all those words, and moisturizer. There's also the anti-chafing performance boxer briefs that help you keep your package cool and smelling fresh all day. So if you're just taking your first step into a larger shaved world, maybe these boxer briefs will help bridge that gap, that interesting sensation of strapping on old underwears when you have less protection in the way. You can get 20% off using our code INSIDE at manscaped.com. 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com using code INSIDE. Thank you, Manscaped, for helping us all liberate our balls as much as we'd like to liberate the rest of the world. Maybe you guys were a little hard on old Tim all along. That's been my position for a while. Maybe it took this to put everything in perspective.
So I'm speedwalking through E3 with Churro.
Don't you have a lounge you can sit in and eat that churro?
Billionaires are just like us.
They really are.
I eat churros.
I also don't make eye contact and look vaguely homeless.